With only one movie left in the Pokemon movie marathon at the time of this video, I figured now would be the time I cover all the special Pokemon films that were released in between the main Pokemon movies. So today we got Mewtwo Returns, Mastermind Mirage Pokemon, and Pokemon Origins. So are these films anything special? Do they pale in comparison to the main movies? Let's find out with Mewtwo Returns. Released in 2001, this film takes place sometime after the events of Pokemon, the first movie.
But wait a minute. Mewtwo erased everyone's memories at the end of that film and seemed to be happy. So what plot threads from that film are left for the sequel to wrap up?
Well, Toucher, while it is true that those in the island got their memories erased, Giovanni of Team Rocket didn't, and now he wants to recapture Mewtwo so that he can use him as his weapon once again. As for Mewtwo, he found a place to call home in the Johto region. So that home is a giant mountain by the name of Mount Quina that's almost impossible to reach the top of, and that is where him and the clone Pokemon are living at the moment. But despite living in a peaceful place, and despite having his heart softened thanks to Ash's actions in the first movie, he's still mopey about him and his clones not belonging to this world. But speaking of Ash, him and his group are passing through Purity Valley, which is an area around the previously mentioned mountain, and they eventually get involved in the conflict between Team Rocket and Mewtwo when Jesse, James, and Meowth try to capture Pikachu and their attempts lead them to the top of the mountain. But in the end, with help from Ash and his group, Mewtwo wipes the memories of his existence from Team Rocket and then decides to leave the mountain to live elsewhere as natural Pokemon in the wild. There's also a subplot about this magic water, but aside from healing Mewtwo near the end, I really didn't care about this little subplot. And that's about it for the story. It's basically just stop Giovanni. But despite that basic premise, and despite my issue with the little subplot, I thought the story wasn't that bad this time around. I like that Giovanni gets to have some time in the spotlight. I like the idea of Mewtwo showing some character growth since the last movie. Sure, it's not the greatest plot, especially when compared to the main Pokemon films, but in terms of a continuation to the first movie, I think they did a decent job here. And hey, at least they didn't contradict Mewtwo's plans every 20 minutes. No, instead, this film has confusing moments like the baby Nidoqueen. Seriously, did this film forget that Nidoran males and females exist? Oh, wait, that's right. For some stupid reason, Nidoqueens can't breed with Nidokings.
Well, it could also be because they're clowns.
But wouldn't they still have some form of memory, even a genetic one of them being Nidorans? Unless Mewtwo's cloning really sucks, those memories should still be there. Oh, and speaking of great ideas, who thought it was a good idea to not only put in really generic music as a soundtrack, but to also have it play during every scene? Yeah, because it's not like this film has moments in it that would normally require no music, like a character nearly dying or a regular conversation. Seriously, what the hell, movie? But on a lighter note, the animation for this movie looks really damn good. Sure, it's on a reduced budget, which makes it resemble the art style used in the later Johto saga, but it still looks pretty damn good. Hell, even the characters this time around were handled a little better than the first movie. I liked how Ash and his group got to contribute in the climax. I like Mewtwo a little more this time around as a character. And hell, the main trio of Team Rocket was really damn good in this one, having some genuinely funny moments and serving as a decent contrast to the rest of the team. But not all the characters are great. I could easily point out how bland Domino is, and I could barely remember Luna and Cullen's characters, but in comparison to the first movie, the character element of this film is a lot better in Mewtwo Returns. But I think it's time to wrap it up for this film. Overall, Mewtwo Returns is a decent follow-up to the first movie, and I do recommend it if you like the first movie. It has its flaws, but I still had a good time watching the special. The same cannot be said for the next special, though. Mastermind Mirage Pokemon was released in 2006 to celebrate the franchise's 10th anniversary and was also the first film to incorporate the new voice cast. Now, as tempting as it is for me to bitch about the voice acting, because it's really shit here, I won't. Why? Well, because this is their first time doing these voices. So because of that, I can cut them a bit of slack on this one. Besides, I think they did improve after this film came out, so bitching about it here is kind of redundant, to be honest. Now then, how about that plot? So, for a 10th anniversary film, what did they give us? Ash and his group of Ho and friends, as well as Misty and Professor Oak, show up to a castle to bear witness to a new creation known as Mirage Pokemon, and have to stop a bad guy from creating the perfect Pokemon with no flaws. That's it. Now, for what it's worth, the concept of Mirage Pokemon does sound like an interesting idea. A Pokemon that could fix the flaws of its real-life counterpart? That could make for an interesting film. Now, the very idea of technological Pokemon versus natural Pokemon could raise a decent debate amongst our characters, and it could make our antagonist of this film, Dr. Young, more of a morally gray villain, since he has a decent reason to do this, but his execution spits in the face of nature itself, and also defies morality and ethics. But instead, this film decides to make Dr. Young an insane psychopath, and the very idea of Mirage Pokemon is labeled as completely bad and must be stopped. Happy 10th anniversary, Pokemon fans! Now, to be fair for a minute, the story element of this film isn't complete shit. there are some good moments here. For example, the dialogue between Oak and Young/Mirage Master is pretty good, and I do like the flashbacks to the other films when Mirage Master provides information on Pikachu. I like the concepts presented in this film, even though I'm not a fan of how this film executes said concepts. And I do like the chemistry between Missy and Ash's group. However, those are only a few good moments this film has going for it. The rest of the story is either meh or just plain bad. As for the characters, there's not really much to them aside from what I just mentioned earlier. Dr. Young is a pretty weak villain despite having some good concepts to him. Professor Oak is just okay in this one, same with Ash, Misty, and May. And Brock was pretty much forgettable, same with Max. As for the music, it's actually pretty good. A lot of the music doesn't sound generic or stock, the ending was pretty good, and unlike, say, Mewtwo Returns, this film understands that, gasp, not every scene needs freaking background music in it! However, I cannot give the same praise to the animation. You can argue that it was done by a different studio, but I still take issue with the animation element of this film. The CGI looks like shit. Again, happy 10th anniversary, Pokemon fans! Enjoy some CGI that looks like a bootleg PS1 game. Hell, at least with a PS1 they could render effects properly. Oh, hi, non-holographic Aggron! How are you doing on this fine day? Well, hey, at least it only happens once. Oops! For God's sakes, this is supposed to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Pokemon. This is where they should be putting their best foot forward. And yet, what did they give their fans? A mediocre story, a terrible villain, and mediocre characters. So yeah, even without the voice acting, this film still doesn't work. It's not good as a regular special episode, and it sucks ass as an anniversary special. Finally, we have Pokemon Origins. Now, unlike the last two films, this one has nothing to do with the Pokemon anime. Instead, Pokemon Origins is an adaptation of the first generation of Pokemon, telling the story of how a young boy named Red went on a journey through Kanto to accomplish Professor Oak's mission of filling up all the entries of the Pokedex, while also getting the 8 gym badges and fighting Team Rocket and his rival Blue along the way. But it's not an exact retelling of the original story, because Pokemon Origins does take a few creative liberties with the story. For instance, Red actually talks in this movie, and his dialogue is actually pretty good for a character originally written to be a silent protagonist. Hell, I also like how Red was written in this movie. Much like someone playing Pokemon for the first time, Red starts his journey not knowing much about Pokemon, as evident by him not knowing about type coverage, but as time goes on, Red, much like that player, becomes more experienced with Pokemon and becomes a stronger trainer as a result, as shown when he defeats Blue in the Indigo Plateau, and defeats Mewtwo with Mega Charizard X. I like that, and it's a good example of character development for this kind of film. Speaking of Mega Charizard, though, this special not only added a scene where Dr. Fuji gives Red the Mega Stones, but also introduced the world to Mega Charizard X, which likely surprised a lot of people at the time, since prior to this film coming out, a lot of people thought Charizard Y was Charizard's Mega Evolution, since that was the only form revealed to us, but nope, it had 2 ways to Mega Evolve, and this form looks freaking beastly. Speaking of beastly, the animation for this special looks amazing. The lighting looks great, the backgrounds look fantastic, the character models look great, and also does a good job standing out from the character models of the anime. The effects look great, and the animation during the fight scenes are very fluent and action-packed. I just love it. And speaking of love, holy shit, that soundtrack! I'm a sucker for remixes, so when I heard these fantastic remixes of the Gen 1 tunes, it made me want to scream because they're so good, and very catchy to boot. Whether it be the title screen music, the Lavender Town music with that slow piano in the beginning, or the adrenaline pumping beat of the Champion theme, this special does a fantastic job recreating the tracks of the original games and making them still catchy to listen to, even after nearly 20 years since they first came out on the Game Boy. As for the characters, I think they were handled pretty well here. I like the rivalry between Red and Blue, I like Professor Oak and some of the side characters in this one, and even the antagonist of the games, Giovanni, was handled pretty well in this one. He certainly had a threat level to him, but I also liked his backstory and when he first started his journey as a trainer and how his fight with Red began to change him. Hell, in a way, I kinda like the reason he disbanded Team Rocket in this version more than the games, because in the games, he disbanded because he didn't want to face his followers after losing to Red, even though we beat him at an earlier point in the game, and he still didn't disband it. In this, however, he disbanded it because during his battle with Red, he remembered his former love for Pokemon, and it made him realize that he should stop using Pokemon for business. Sure, it's a bit contrived, but at least it makes a bit more sense in comparison to him not being able to face his followers after losing to a kid. Though speaking of the Silph Coast scene, can I just say that I love the fight between Charizard and Nidoqueen? And no, it's not just because Nidoqueen is one of my favorite Pokemon. though it does help, but also because it showcases another difference between the games and the special. In the games, Red beats Giovanni here, but in the special, well, Nidoqueen and Charizard's ass back to it on a wall-sized plate. See? There's another thing about the special to like. If you hate Charizard, here's a scene where he gets its ass kicked. Granted, this film is not perfect. The pacing is a little janky at points, since this is adapting a multiple-hour story and condensing it into about an hour and a half special. And the first part is a little slow in its pacing. But outside of that, this is still a really damn good special, and I highly recommend giving it a watch if you haven't already. And that's all the special Pokemon films thus far. I'm sure that with the resurgence and popularity of the franchise, we'll likely see more of these films coming out in the future. I mean, we did get a web series last year adapting certain scenes from the games called Pokemon Generations, but for now, I have a marathon to conclude. So next time we meet, I will finish up this marathon with Volcanion and the Mechanical Marvel. It's taken me a long time to reach this point, but now it's almost over. See you then.